Hi there. Happy Thanksgiving. Here it is. It's the day. Although I'm making pies now because our family isn't getting together till tomorrow. So I thought I would visit for a little while and talk about life and love and happiness and then the Holy Ghost. You probably don't remember that song. It's old. Anyway, I'm working on making my favorite pie crust in the world. And in fact, I don't ever use any other pie crust. And this recipe is probably out there somewhere, but I have never seen it anywhere other than where I got it from my mother-in-law. And so I'm going to share it with you. And I'm telling you, it's the best pie crust in the world. And I'll explain to you how I make it as I go along here. But how are you guys today? What kind of things are you doing for Thanksgiving? You know, even though this may be too late because you baked your pies, you'll still want this recipe for the future because there's pie all year round, right? So for this recipe makes either two single crust pies or one whole crust pie. And I usually double it or triple it or whatever because I'm usually making lots and lots of pies. But for this video, I'm just going to do the single batch. So it starts with a cup of shortening. And I always, my grandma told me, don't use that fake shortening, that vegetable oil shortening. She goes, use lard. Well, I don't have lard, but you know what I do have is I always get the kind that says shortening prepared from meat fats. And this is just, great value brand and it works just great. I don't use butter. I know that a lot of recipes call for butter in their crust and it has to be chilled just right and everything like that. And I don't do that. I just do shortening for everything. And this shortening works really good because it is like lard. It is made mostly from meat fats. And if I have real lard, that's even better. But it gives it everything that it needs. So it's 1 cup of shortening. And I don't want it warm, but I don't want it so cold. I forgot my big fork. I use one of my big giant serving forks is great for mixing pie crust. If you have a pie crust mixer cutter, I had one. I had actually a Pampered Chef one, and it just didn't really, it bent. And I was like, this is a waste of money. So then it calls for 3 cups of white flour. And this is probably one of the most important parts is don't overdo your flour. If you even get a few tablespoons, a couple tablespoons too much, you don't want your flour packed down. I always sprinkle my flour into the measuring cup rather than scoop it if I can because that'll pack it down if you scoop it. So there's 2 cups. And then I have a bag on the floor here, a giant bag that I just opened, one of those 20-pound bags, So I am going to scoop this one. I'm going to try not to let it pack down for my 3rd cup. And my favorite, everybody has their favorite kind of flour. I don't know about you, but I like, as far as just regular store-bought flour goes, I like the Dakota Made brand. That's what I prefer to use for most things. Even when I do bread, and I always do wheat bread, I always like to use the Dakota Made brand. And I prefer an unbleached flour. And I don't know if this one is or not. Yep, this one is unbleached. I mean, it makes no sense to me. So this is what I do then is I'm mixing them with my fork. And I'm cutting it in. Just squashing it down. I'm going to try to move this here. My setup isn't the greatest, so you'll have to just pardon me for that. I'm not a professional. Try this at home. No, you can try it at home. So I just keep going around, smashing it around until I've got it pretty well mixed. I'm afraid that the camera's not going to stay up tight. There we go. That's pretty. How about that? How about no? So if you hear noise back there, I've got some grandchildren here today, and they were outside playing in the snow because we got a big snowstorm night before last. Got 14 or 15 inches here at our house, and more in some other places. It's a lot. And so they've been out playing in the snow. and the first sledding snow of the season. And now they're in warming up and they're watching a little bit of stuff on TV. They like to watch these magnet fishing shows or magnet searching shows where scuba divers or people take these magnets on a rope and they flip them out and they find all kinds of treasures and they find phones and jewelry and all kinds of stuff, and they try to, if they can, like with the phones especially, they try to get them returned to their owners. It's kind of an interesting thing, and I think it's a great idea for a gift. I don't know if you're trying to figure out the right gift for especially young boys. They would love this, to take it out, find fishing lures off the docks and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so now you can see that it's nice. Let's see, can you see that? It's nice and crumbly. It's a nice crumbly texture. It's not, I don't, you don't want to stop too soon. You want to mix it up really nice till it's a crumbly texture. So, I always look on the wrong side of the camera and I can't find the thing I want to see ya. So anyway, the next thing we do is I take my measuring cup and in it I crack one egg, one regular egg, cabbage, and I take my fork and I mix that up. Just kind of get it whipped up a little bit in there. It doesn't have to be crazy or anything like that, but it's easier to start by getting it mixed up a little bit. So how are you guys doing? You getting snow at your place where you live? Are you in the snow region? Where we've gotten a lot of it, the upper Midwest has just got a swath of snow across it in the last few days. Now for the other special ingredients. This is where it gets a little different from most recipes. I put in a teaspoon of salt into the egg. It's going right in my cup. Then I put in, where is it? A teaspoon of sugar into the cup. Then, and this is the ingredient I think that makes this recipe above and beyond all the other recipes I've ever tried. And this is vinegar. And I always, a lot of recipes call for like regular vinegar because, to the color, it ain't going to change the color. And I just feel like apple cider vinegar is healthier. So I also do 1 teaspoon of vinegar. And I don't know if that's what does it, but this is such a nice flaky pie crust and it has just the right texture and yumminess to it. Now I'm going to, actually, I'll do it over here. So I'm going to use, I just filled this little cup with water. And I usually do this at the sink, but 5 tablespoons of water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Might have dripped some, so I added a couple drips extra. Now you stir that all up. But anyhow, I think I was saying, I think one of those magnet fishing sets, it's just a rope with a big heavy magnet on the end. You could buy kits. It'd make a great boy gift for birthdays or Christmas. And I might be thinking about that. I don't know if I'd get the whole kit or just the magnet and they would have lots of fun with that. This guy on this show that does it, he's on YouTube actually. He finds just lots of cool things. So I've got that mixed really well. And then I'm just going to pour it around in my mixture. And I'm going to start to stir it. Now, my grandma always said that if you don't want tough pie crusts, that you shouldn't play with it too much. And I always try to remember those little pieces of advice from my grandma. A lot of the things that I do on my channel that have to do with food, I never considered myself like a huge foodie, but I guess in a way I am. But my characters in my books, they are always doing a lot of cooking and baking, it seems, or a lot of gardening or putting by because they live at a time where that was necessary. Most of my characters do. And so I try to learn how things were done depending on the era and do it just that way. Okay, I've got it kind of mixed together. My grandma said don't play with it too much because you'll make it tough. And I've got it kind of a little bit mixed together. It's still kind of crumbly, but it's getting there, and it's got a nice hold together texture. So I'm going to mix the rest of it with my hands. And I did wash my hands before I started, just so you don't think I'm really being gross or anything. I washed them really good. Ooh, there's sun peeking through the clouds. I'm in front of the window in the kitchen, and it's been, ever since the storm, it's been just overcast and just something fierce, very dark. Oh, it keeps looking like it's going to snow more, and I think there is like a chance of a round 2 of some size. I don't know how much later this weekend, but hopefully the conditions are good for traveling. If you've got family members coming to spend the weekend with you or for just the day, or if you're having to go out and about to the big Black Friday sales tomorrow. I don't do Black Friday sales. Do you do Black Friday sales? What do you hope to get this year? Leave me a comment. By the way, if you have seen this same recipe, leave a comment for me and tell me, and if you remember where you've seen it, with the vinegar, sugar, salt, water, flour, lard. And oh yeah, this is turning out nice. This is actually I made a batch last night because I made a pumpkin pie. See my little turkey on there? I made a pumpkin pie. It's not a fancy edged crust. I kind of gave up on those. I used to do them all the time, fancy crust. Now I just smoosh it on around the edges. I'm going to make at least 6 pies today. So I'm like not taking the time to do all that, but I do have my little turkey cookie cutter. See it? It's kind of cute. And I like to take a piece of pie crust and cut it out. And when the pie is most of the way baked, then I lay it on top so that can bake 2 on the top of decoration. I have some little tiny ones that are like maple leaves and acorns and pumpkins and stuff too. Sometimes I use those. I think this is mixed well enough. So this is the thing, is even a tablespoon too much of flour, or if you use a brand of flour, some flours change consistency of things. Some flours, the way they're ground or whatever, just changes the consistency. So I'm going to make 2 pumpkin pies out of this right here. And otherwise I could make 1 whole topped like apple or berry pie, but someone else is bringing those to the family feast. And if you put this does feel a tiny bit tough today. So hopefully I didn't get either too little water or too much flour. I think it feels okay, but I like it so it's almost sticky, but not quite. Whoops. We're not going to use sugar. We're going to use flour. I've got this big old bag on the floor. It's a brand new bag, and put a little flour on. And these plastic mats, they're real cheap. They're plastic cutting boards. I always keep some on hand because they're great for doing pie crusts on and cookies. And even if the pie crust has to go over the edge a little bit, you can pick it up easy and, what was that? Flip it over your pie plate, and that works really good. Or for cutting out cutout cookies, for the kids to play with Play-Doh on and cut out and carve up a storm on. So I flour that, which is also going to add flour, of course. Got my rolling pin. I got a little excess flour on my mat, so I'm just going to use some of that on my rolling pin on top of my dough. Here's how it looks on there. Just a big old blob of dough. And I'm going to start rolling it out. Yeah, it's a little bit tough. I could have added another, I don't know, between a teaspoon and a tablespoon of water, or, and maybe it depends too on the size of the egg. usually this one turns out really good. And this is actually going to be just fine, I think. The one I did yesterday was just rolled so smooth. So do you get a lot of family for Thanksgiving, or do you travel yourselves? We're shy a couple people this year, and it's always hard when, you know, when anybody's missing. It just doesn't, you thank the Lord and you're blessed and stuff, but it doesn't feel the same. My son that lives in Indiana isn't able to make it up, although we are blessed to have his kiddos here, so that's great. And my granddaughter that lives downstate a little ways, she's coming home for Christmas, so she wasn't able to come for Thanksgiving because she had to choose which weekend she had to work. And Kendall Ray, if you are watching this, don't you dare move to Chicago. No. Anyway. But the rest of the kids, and of course we're missing my son who left us early for glory. I just wonder what Thanksgiving's going to be like in heaven. It's going to be amazing, I'm sure. Can't even imagine the wonders that God has in store for us. But I'm sure he's joyful and happier than he's ever been. And we miss him. And we're going to miss him around the table tonight and tables. The rest of us will, you know, we'll do our best. And I have 3 other kids that will be home and a whole host of grandkids. Like, I think out of the 20, I think 18 of them will be here. I hope. And so our house is not very large. Our house is tall. Looks larger from the outside. It's tall. But it's an old farmhouse, and so the rooms are small. My kitchen is long and skinny, and my living room is small. And instead of having a dining room, we made a bigger bathroom. So we don't have a ton of space, but we make do. We set up people wherever we can, and it's mayhem, it's noisy, and it's wonderful. Okay, this could have been a little bit less tough because some of the edges didn't roll out as smooth. You can kind of see there. But it's pretty good. I was able to get it pretty thin and stuff. So now, what in the world did I do with one of my pie plates? I got lots of pie plates. This one's cute. It's got cherry pie recipe in the bottom of it. I actually don't have one. I think I used to. They had a pumpkin pie recipe in it, and I've lost it. How do you lose stuff like that? I don't know. I have a blueberry pie one, and an apple pie one, and a cherry pie, and I feel like there was a little bit of one that had a pumpkin in it, but I don't know what happened to that. So anyhow, I'm using the same lard, and I'm greasing my pie plate. Jeepers, you don't want to forget to do that. Nothing worse than trying to get unstuck. You know, some people use spray. I use spray in some things, but mostly I prefer to use. You know, one thing you can do if you make too thick of a pie crust by accident, adding more water isn't the greatest thing, but if you add more shortening, sometimes that helps to add a little extra shortening. And maybe you could even melt a teeny weeny bit of butter or soften it. I shouldn't say melt it, but that you could maybe mix in to help it. So it's salvageable when you do that, but it's just not the greatest. So I have this generously coated, and I'm going to take this right like this, and I was able to flip it over right where I want it and peel that off. Doesn't that work slick? And I guess I need both hands. I could have shifted it over just a little bit more when I flipped it. But, so this pie crust turned out okay. I've had them turn out much smoother. I'm going to have to be really careful. If anything, if anything, under measure your flour, because you can always add a little bit more if it's too sticky. But over measuring it is a world of hurt. So there's my pie crust. I can do the edges however I want to do them, and I'm not going to do them on camera because I'm not a beautiful edge maker. And years ago I used to fuss really a lot and do all kinds of designs. And sometimes what I like to do, like with apple pies and stuff, I like to take some cute cutouts like that, and I like to cut, instead of cutting slits in or whatever, do that. Now, my author friend, Norma Gail Holtman, she makes amazingly beautiful pies. The people that get her pies are just so fortunate. Mine are tasty. I just go for tasty. But like I said, in some of my books, the girls are doing a lot of baking and cooking and stuff, and a lot of them have to cook on an old-fashioned wood cook stove. I remember as a little girl at my grandma's house, my grandma cooked with the wood cook stove until I think I was, 10 or 11 years old. And I don't know how she did it, man. That's tough, keeping at the right temperature. They get to know their cook stoves. My mom actually, many years later, bought a wood cook stove just like the one she grew up with. And she would occasionally bake in it, so she knew how to do it. Knows how to do it, I should say. I don't think she still has it, though, since she moved. But anyway, there's one pie crust down, I should say. I'll be baking a bunch more of these, and my little granddaughter's going to come out and help me with the rest here. But anyhow, so I try to include that. It's nice to know how to do some of that stuff so that when I write stories, my novel, The Love Coward, takes place in the late 40s, right after World War II. And I try to incorporate a lot of the types of things they would be doing on the farm and in the home at that era. She takes care of the heroine in that story, Tula. She takes care of her parents. She works with her dad on the farm, and her mom had something that has been slowly crippling her. Well, it's polio. I'm trying to remember when I wrote this, that they didn't know as much about it then as they do now. And the repercussions. She had oh no, they knew. She had polio when she was young, the mother in the story. And sometimes back in the day, people who had polio, when they were older, symptoms would come back that would start crippling them later. And that's what happened to the character in my story. Kind of an after effects thing that some people suffered from. So did you ever know anybody with polio that grew up, that older people that had polio? I knew a couple people. I've known a few people, actually, that are just a little bit older than me who had polio when they were kids. And, walked with limps and things, a lifelong affliction. So I'm thankful we don't have much of that around anymore. But so I've got a little piece. See, I got a little ball left. I can add it to the other ball, or I can use it to do my cutouts on top. So, yeah. So I'm waiting for my arrival of Haven for Love. That story does have one of those stories in there. I'm trying to think. One of them has a fair amount of cooking in it. In the first story in there, A Chosen Pursuit, there's a lot of cooking going on. It's at a camp, so it's for big crowds. And in the other story, Heart Not Taken, the hero, he has grown up in a house full of, his parents' house he had all sisters, a whole house full of sisters. So he was a little bit of a teased and stuff by all his sisters. And they do a lot of cooking. There's flour flying around the kitchen and stuff when he goes home for holidays in that story. So anyway, I guess I'll roll out my other dough. I hope you have a really blessed Thanksgiving. I hope you try this recipe. I'll go through it once again real quick. 3 cups of flour, 1 cup of shortening, preferably with meat fasts, not melted or anything like that. Fork it together till it's crumbly. Add in a mix together 1 egg, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of vinegar, apple cider vinegar, preferably, and 5 tablespoons of water. Mix it, squish it around, roll it out, and you're on your way to great pie. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you and give you peace. Bye.